Welcome to Pitch Bitch, a brand new women's rugby podcast. Don't forget you can find loads of free content on my Instagram at lifther_strength or on my website at liftherstrength.co.uk. Hi, I'm Georgia, your host, and I'm buzzing to be here today with my first ever rugby coach, Rich the Boot Whincup. Welcome, Rich. How are you today?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, all good. Thank you very much. Um, yeah, pre-season started with one of my teams, so it's doesn't really feel like I've been away, but yeah, it's all good.
No, pre-season has come around fast, hasn't it?
It really has. It
Really
really
fast.
has.
So, first of all, obviously, I know your history, but could you just give
Mhm.
everyone a little bit of a dive into how you first got involved in rugby and like how you've come up through the ranks?
Yeah. So, it started in 1985 when I joined Stow on the Wold as a very mini. Um, Played at Stowe for my school years. Ended up playing for the seniors, then went to college, played for Camp Hill and for Moseley for a little while. Then went down to London, got injured, um, focused on my studies at university because I needed to because I wasn't the sharpest tool in any of the boxes. Um, and then I started working at Cirencester Kings Hill School in their PE department, and my head of department said I should go and play for Cirencester. So, not wanting to annoy my head of department, I went and played for Cirencester. Enjoyed it there, social rugby. It was a step back from what I used to do, but enjoyed it. Ended up playing scrum half, which wasn't a familiar position, but I could pass a bit and I could kick. So they put me there, and then I we bought a house, and that kind of takes over, and you start a family. And when I had my first son, I thought to myself, it'd be nice if he plays rugby in the future. And, I might want to coach him. And he grew up to love rugby from an early age. He went to Rugby Tykes in Tewkesbury. It's where we live now. And he joined, well, I started helping out at Tewkesbury Rugby Club in the Tigers section, which is a junior section, when he was 5. And then I ended up taking on the age group that he was part of and took him all the way through to Colts and then stepped away. But we'll talk about that because that's one of the things that has, a negative story, if you like, about coaching. But really, a lot of my work has been in the women's game in the last 10 years or so. Um, I was a kicker, as I said, back in the old days. I kicked off sand, which was a different experience
Mm.
to what these kickers have now. And I did a bit of coaching with the Gloucestershire women's senior team, and I identified then that we were leaving a lot of points out on the pitch.
Mm.
And I started to look at coaching and kicking and remembering the old days and watching kickers now. And I coached a couple of young lads from Tewkesbury, went well, and I formulated a bit of a strategy and approached Susie Appleby, who was a Gloucester Hartbury head coach at the time. I joined Gloucester Hartbury, had a great time. Um, then went our separate ways and joined Worcester Warriors.
Mm.
And at Worcester Warriors, I was asked to go and coach the Sweden Valkyries as they were in the old days in Staines of all places. It doesn't involve as much travel as one would think.
No.
And did a bit of work with them. And then Worcester sadly went into liquidation or administration. And I joined Cheltenham Tigers the day after I left Worcester. So they came a knocking. And I've been at Cheltenham ever since. But also, I've set up the women and girls section up at Stow on the Wold, my home club, if you like. And more recently, I have become the only civilian to coach the Royal Navy, which is pretty cool. So I work with the kickers in the women's Navy team as well on a consultation basis. Go down to Portsmouth whenever they have camps, and that's probably the coolest thing that I do at the moment. But yeah, so head of coach development now at Tewkesbury. Now my boys have stopped playing, and so help the other coaches to sort of be the best version of themselves they can be. And yeah, so still sort of getting stuck into it really. And
Amazing.
kicking coach at Stowe Men as well. So and Cheltenham Tigers women still, yeah. It's all good. But it's busy, but it's good. It's
Yeah,
good
that's
stuff.
awesome. It's like
Yeah.
you've got so many things going on that you just go, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, I forgot
Yeah,
about
it is
that.
it is a bit like that these days, but I'm very lucky in that there aren't a lot of specialist kicking coaches about, particularly in the women's game.
Yeah,
And I do get asked to do some cool stuff. So I'm very grateful to women's rugby. Women's rugby is a real passion for me. I love coaching it. I love watching it. I'm the Gloucester Hartbury Stadium announcer at
yes,
Kingsholm, which is really good fun. It gets tricky when you get the opposition team sheet 15 minutes before kickoff and you've got to get your head around some of the more trickier names. That's not
yes,
easy, but it's a brilliant thing to do. And to see the growth of women's rugby from top to bottom has been superb. And with the World Cup coming up, little great things like I've just applied for a little Rugby World Cup activities pack for girls teams. So Tewkesbury have now got a crafts arts and crafts set, bibs and like goodie bags and stuff. So we're
amazing.
going to hold a watch party in one of the England games and get all the girls together. So it's really good.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. I think they're
Mm.
doing a is it knitting or crochet that I think
Well,
Abby Dow and Tatiana Hurd are like
they,
trying to get everyone to like knit for the Women's World Cup, which I think is a great idea.
fair play,
I
yeah.
mean,
Well,
why
it's
not?
good, isn't it? I don't know what's in these activity bags, but I'm sure they'll have a good time with them.
Yes, I'm sure they will. Well, yeah, I mean, you've done a bit of everything, haven't you? I was literally just thinking, as you were saying about the kicking, that I remember sitting watching women's rugby maybe 5, 10 years ago and thinking that the one thing it was missing was really good kicking, and it
Mm.
was like the only like obvious difference between the men and the women's game, and it was purely like, just that they just didn't do it that much,
Yeah,
as opposed to like they can't do it.
yeah.
But yeah, it was interesting to hear this you say that because I'm like, yeah, I remember thinking
Mm.
that it really
A lot,
needed to happen.
yeah, a lot of people do, and they tag me and stuff whenever they watch women's rugby and stuff, and that's very nice. But I'm lucky to have worked with the likes of Emma Singh, who's still
Mm,
at Gloucester Hartbury and kicking beautifully. Sarah Nicholas at Leicester Tigers, Emma Mundy at Leicester Tigers. I was in a very fortunate position where Gloucester Hartbury played Leicester Tigers last season,
mhm.
and I had coached every player that put their boot to a ball in that game.
That's
So it was
amazing.
a really nice moment to see that. And yeah, it is developing. It's still got a long way to go. It's still not prioritized by enough teams. But then again, Cheltenham Tigers, because we train at least for an hour and a half each week with the kicking stuff.
Hmm.
Opposition taking note. They don't, particularly at the level that Cheltenham Tigers play, they don't want to give away penalties because my kickers will kick it
Get
deep
it?
into the corner.
Yeah.
They might get over the post. So we're changing, and we had both teams at Twickenham in the Papa John's finals a couple of years back, and they both won. And it surprised me because Anna Howes, who was a footballer, has come to play for Cheltenham Tigers for 3 or 4 years now.
Mm.
She slotted the first kick, and it wasn't easy at all. And the commentator almost sounds surprised,
Right, yeah.
which was, and it is what it is, but it's growing in popularity. And I've always said if you give me a woman who's played football, I can probably mold them into a rugby kicker because they know where the ball should be coming off in terms of the contact point of the boot and things. So
Yeah.
it's developing, but you are right, it's still got a long way to go.
Yeah. So obviously, sadly, we know people who aren't supportive of the women's game or who aren't
Mhm.
interested for whatever
Mhm.
reason it might be. Um, and obviously there was more of that when you were starting out. Like there wasn't much women's rugby at all when you were starting out. So how would you say, what's the biggest thing that you say has changed since in the women's game since like you first saw it? You've
The visibility
mm,
of it, that's the biggest thing. And I firmly believe in this whole role modeling concept. If you can see it, you can be it. and
Yeah.
that's definitely the case with women's rugby. The game is growing from junior levels right the way up, and just look at the semi-final, Gloucester Hartbury versus Bristol Bears.
That was
We had
epic.
8,500 people,
Yeah.
and I've never spoken in front of that many people
No.
before. It comes with its own challenges, but people like Alona Mar, she some players are slightly resentful of the attention that she gets,
Hmm.
but she uses it in such a good way.
Yes, she does. Yeah.
And I met her after the game, and it's clear that she is being pushed around from pillar to post
Hmm.
by her entourage, and she
Yeah.
she doesn't have time for anybody, but she makes time for everybody, and that's a
Hmm.
special skill.
Yes, it
Her
is.
entourage is saying, "We need to go. No, I need to speak to these people. They've come here. Well, they want to chat. They want a picture," and that's really impressive. And that's what the game needs. I mean, I had a chat with her. I said, "Big fan of what you're doing for women's rugby. You know, and all that." And she said, why you dressed so smartly?" I said, "Oh, because I was on the PA system." She said, "Oh, great job. I really enjoyed it." I'm like, she didn't have to say that,
No.
but she does, and that's
Yeah.
what probably makes her who she is,
Yeah.
and such a visible, body confident person. Yeah, she's a brilliant role model. But all of these women are, and you look
Yeah.
at the end of the game, because I was lucky enough to coach a couple of times at King's Home back in the old days, and there was a few people that would hang about and chat. But now, God, there's loads of people that want stuff signed, and
Yeah.
it's just a magic atmosphere. And look at the red roses, the gates they get at Twickenham, and when they go to other stadiums and stuff is tremendous. And the PWR playoff final at Sarries, incredible stuff.
Mm.
I mean, my cousin went, and he said, I know you've been in rugby a long time, but they live near Saracens. He said, but this is absolutely sensational.
Yeah.
But as soon as people break away from the fact that they comparing the two, men and women's rugby,
Mm.
you can't do that. They're different sports. They're almost standalone
They're
sports.
quite different. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, the women can't rely on the crash and the bang and the wallop and stuff. They want the subtlety of skills, which plays into my favour as a
Mm.
as a coach.
Yeah.
It's a different game. It's a more skillful game. It's a slower game. It's a more tactical game,
Hmm.
and that's brilliant. My goddaughter now plays up at Stowe. Hello, Jemima, if you're watching. It's wonderful to see her. But her granddad, the guy who took me to Stowe back in the old days with Jemima's dad, he they I get him into the games at Gloucester Hartbury, and I can't tell you the exact words that he said, but he said you know, to the effect of that it's a great game to
Mm.
watch,
Yeah.
and he's been playing for you know longer than I've been around.
Yeah.
So, it's good stuff. It's
It
good
is.
stuff.
And I mean, as Jemima's coach, I'll say that
Mm.
she's going to be a star, Rich. Don't you
Yeah, I
worry.
think so.
She's
I
got the
think
skills.
the early signs are good. She's
Yes.
quite processy and that, but and she's tall, quick.
Yeah.
She's got all the basics, hasn't she? That you would say, right, this is what you need in order to be molded, and I think she's got it. So
And
yeah,
if you ask her to do something, she just does it, which
yeah,
is like a
yeah,
whole extra
yeah,
bonus as a coach, isn't it? Because sometimes you
absolutely.
ask a group of people to do something and you feel like you've just said it to no one.
Yeah,
And you're like, okay, great.
you have to be coachable, don't you?
Hmm.
And the
Yes.
best players are.
Yes,
They're
absolutely.
without ego. I mean, so Megan Goddard was a player that I watched at England level. She was at Hartbury, so we had the interest, and she came to Gloucester Hartbury from Worcester, and she liked to kick. So we met, and I said, what did your England coach do?" She said, "It doesn't matter what my England coach did. You're my kicking coach now."
Hmm. I
And we
like
worked
that.
together, and we
Mm.
we completely rebuilt her action, and she went on to become incredibly consistent and the first ever woman to kick points for the women's Barbarians team.
Amazing.
And now she's a good friend of mine, and she coaches her nephew down at Tewkesbury. And
Awesome.
we've got women's rugby royalty coaching under sevens at Tewkesbury. It's magic.
Yes. And also, I mean, have you seen in terms of the growth, did you see that there's now the first official professional league in the States?
Yes, which is great. And
Very
that's good
exciting.
because that opens doors for an awful lot of players to go and enjoy themselves
Yes.
for a couple of years or whatever. I mean, what an opportunity that is.
It's fantastic.
Is
And the
it?
fact that the US is starting to get behind it tells us
Yeah.
that like that's where like funding is going to start to come
Yep.
from. All this stuff that
Yep.
rugby, specifically women's rugby, just doesn't have enough of.
Mm, mm.
I think this is brilliant.
But but it's the American ways, isn't it? Look at
Yeah.
the soccer team.
Mm.
They are they've been the best for many a long year because they've been appropriately resourced and um everyone loves it.
Yeah.
So hopefully rugby will go the same way.
Exactly. And hopefully we'll start to get it a little bit more competitive here because we still have
Yeah.
a bit of a gap between the Red Roses for the same reason in that
Yeah.
they've had the funding and everything for the longest.
Mm,
And then
mm.
there's a bit of a gap between like the rest of the national teams, but it is getting closer.
Closing, you're right. You're absolutely right. Um, I like Sean Lynn an awful lot.
Yes.
I know him well from his Hartpury days. Wonderful bloke, and I'm so pleased for him that he's now in Wales.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. He's already created a wonderful atmosphere
Mm.
that you can just see throughout. But you've got Matt Banahan up at Scotland. You've got a lot
Hmm.
of good coaches coaching at the top of the game now.
Yeah.
And you know, uh, John Mitchell at England. He's a cracking coach.
Yes.
England men, Wasps, and his son plays cricket for New Zealand. Tremendous.
High caliber family.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Awesome. Um, okay, bit of a different thing. What is the best piece of advice another coach has ever given you?
I would say don't overuse your whistle.
I like that.
Because you hear coaches whistle all the time. They whistle for stuff to start, they whistle for stuff to stop, they whistle to get attention, they
Hmm.
whistle all the time. And when in a game, when do you hear a whistle? When the game stops.
Yeah, that's it.
And you can't be over reliant on a whistle. And my head of department, when I was a PE assistant teacher, Matt Coe, taught me that
Hmm.
many years ago at Kings Hill. He said, don't overblow your whistle because the whistle is significant.
Yes.
Where you can, use your voice. Um, yeah, and things like don't overcoach
Hmm.
either. I quite like to set problems. You got to get the ball from this end to that end, pass these players. How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
And things like that. But it's crazy, isn't it? Because depending on what level you're coaching, if you're coaching, say, an under 15 lads team, you want to say, right, what would happen if I did that? What would happen if you're there and you moved a little bit? It's very questioning. Whereas
Hmm.
top level with a goal kicker, Rich, tell me what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah.
Tell me, is my foot in the right place or not?
Yeah.
Why am I missing to the right all the time? It's very much more of a directional thing. So
Sure.
coach at the appropriate level and don't blow your whistle all the time because it drives other coaches nuts too.
Yeah, and I mean, and if the players are actually listening, it should drive them nuts too. But half the time they're not listening, so
Yeah, exactly. And don't listen to the cone snobs. Too many cones. No.
I
When
love cones,
cones
but
are
I
on the
think that might
floor,
be because you were my first
there
coach.
you go. Where cones are on the floor, coaching is happening.
Yes,
Simple
it
as that.
is.
And everyone knows where they
Absolutely.
are with a cone, don't they?
They do. Simple but effective system, isn't it?
You're right. You're right. Line up on that row of cones. Right, you are. I know what I've got to do because there's a line of cones there. Simple.
Yes. Yes.
I've never been a shouty coach.
No.
It's not the way I do things. Um, I always have conversations, but there's a lot of male coach out there that are Jeff, Mother Jeff of this, kicking water bottles, all that kind of thing, throwing balls on the floor. I don't get it. You've got to maintain some sort of an air of tranquility, even if you're not feeling tranquil. But you are exactly right. women are different. It's clear.
Hmm.
Um, what I what I find is the light-hearted approach works quite a lot.
Yeah.
Let's all have a good time first, and we'll learn something. And that goes into my uni lecturing as well. Students learn better when they're happy
Yeah.
and they've got a smile on their face. If you start putting pressure on people, next person to drop a ball, everybody does 30 press ups. I mean, that's such an antiquated way of coaching.
Yeah.
And that just makes people feel anxious and self-conscious and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, you don't need to do that.
No.
Um, and one of the, I learned a lot from a lady called Mandy Bartlett, who has stepped away from coaching and rugby now. But she was one of the team managers, and she probably got me in to help the Tewkesbury girls many, many years back. And quite often she would just take one of the girls or the women off for a little walk around the pitch, and then they would rejoin in the training and it'll be good. But during that time, she would just make sure they were all right.
Hmm.
And, everything okay? Yeah. What's troubling you? And I guess as a kicking coach who works with individuals or small groups, some of my coaching is right, vent at me, tell me what's going on, tell me the problems. We'll feel better, and you will as well. And now let's go and kick some balls in.
Yeah.
And that's great. And if that's what I have to do, then absolutely, but they know that they call me their kicking dad or their kicking uncle, and that's fine. If that's the way they want to look at me, perfect, because
Yeah.
it means that they know I care and they can talk to me about anything they want. So wildly different. You're
Mm.
exactly right, and maybe it's definitely maybe a gender specific thing, but it could be just a where we are in rugby growth thing.
Yeah.
You know, I never reacted to a shouty coach. I was one that said, "Hey, Rich, how could you do that a bit different?" Oh yeah, good point. I could have been stood a bit deeper, or I could have been hovering around the back area more. That's the way to probably get through to people. And if
Yeah.
people do lose it, then yeah, well, look at yourself, but also the players should probably look at themselves too,
Mm.
and what have they done to make that coach lose it?
Well, yeah. I mean, if I'm being shouted at, the thing that immediately is going to go through my head, and this is just
Mm,
my own process, is
mm,
that I'm doing absolutely everything wrong and I shouldn't
mm,
be here.
mm,
And then
yeah,
that just adds into the classic imposter syndrome that so
yeah,
many people get, but women in particular.
yeah,
And so I think it's key for a sport that is a little bit scary. It can be a little bit scary when you start out. Like a lot of women come to their first session and they're kind of
mm,
excited, but also just, they're always like, are we going to do any tackling? And
yeah,
it's like there's
yeah,
this like sort of bit of fear.
mm,
And I have found it like a bit of a balance between being like super encouraging and being like absolutely everything is fine,
yeah,
but also trying to prep them for the bit that for the for like tackling in
yeah,
particular, but building up really slowly. So like I remember when you first started teaching us how to tackle, we spent 20 minutes doing a contact warm up where it was all about being comfortable, like being on the floor,
yeah,
being sat on, all these
yeah,
kind of things, which just make you realize that actually when you do hit the floor, it's really not that bad.
mm, mm,
But when you first see it and when you watch it on TV, you see some of those hits and you're like, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then you think, well, I'm never going to play rugby, so what's the point? So I won't go to my local club or I won't
yeah.
any of that. And yeah, so I think there is a key balance in just making sure that you can absolutely do this.
Yeah, yeah, but that is what stops people, and
Mm,
that's what stops people regardless of what level. People that want to make it in rugby have to almost make a contract with themselves that I'm going to have to put my head somewhere where it might hurt a little bit,
hmm
I remember my son Tommy plays for the seniors first at Tewkesbury now, and when he was younger, he took a whack on the head because he jackaled over the ball and somebody connected with their knee on his head, and it's sort of rugby thing, and it is what it is.
hmm
But he came off and he said, well, I said, Tom, you're gonna have to sit out now, mate. We're gonna have to give you a couple of weeks off. Why is that? Because you got a knock on the head, and you need to recover now.
Mhm.
He said, yeah, but I got the ball, didn't I? I'm like, yeah, you did, but now your eyes are all wonky, mate. So you need to sit down for a bit.
Bless him.
But they need to, like you said, you need to understand that. And also I mean, it's fair to say that with rugby, if you are tentative in going
Mm,
into any form of contact, then you're going to get hurt
yeah.
because you're going in half-hearted and you're already on the back foot. You need to go in confidently and almost like the more effectively you go in for a tackle or a ruck, the less likely you are to get hurt. But
Yes.
making that agreement in your mind is a big thing, and you
Absolutely.
put it across very well.
I mean, it's also like this is sort of harking to a lot of things I hear with particularly people like when you have clubs who are desperate for players and don't
Yeah,
have quite enough numbers. So they'll be like, "Oh, let's grab this person. Have you ever played rugby before? Come play for us." And then people are playing and full contact rugby having never tackled
yeah,
or never been
yeah.
taught how to tackle. And of course they're scared and of course they get nervous and of course they get injured and it's just ridiculous. I'm like, surely the game going ahead is not as important as the fact that
Yeah.
you've got half your team who don't know what on earth they're doing and they're just going to end up with frickin' ambulances.
There's a lot of safeguarding problems, and you know the way I coach, it was always safety first with
Hmm.
you guys. If something's not safe, we won't do it.
Yeah,
Simple as that. And unless people aren't ready, then we won't do it.
yeah.
And it was recommended to us that we did stuff. You remember, and I'm like, no, we're not going to do it because we're not ready,
Hmm.
and people aren't ready to be crashing into people. And but I mean, that's a safeguarding thing, isn't it? I saw a kids' football training happen at 4 o'clock till 5 o'clock last night,
In that heat?
and I'm like, right, it's not the season.
No.
It's a pre-season session with kids, so that's quite strange in itself that you've already started. Secondly, it doesn't matter if you miss a week when it's 29 degrees and the kids are all knackered. The coaches were knackered. It's like just know when to stop it.
Hmm. Yeah, know when
But
to take a break. So, what do you think is the best way that we can create more opportunities for young girls to play rugby, but also to want to play rugby? Because
mm,
there are lots of girls who could,
mm.
but it's scary, or various things get in the way, or like there's football's more interesting, or cricket's more interesting. So, what do you think is the way that we can like encourage those sporty girls to get into rugby?
Yeah, I think you are right. I think any sport for girls is good, regardless of whether it's the traditional or
Hmm.
non-traditional girls' sport. And I did a bit of research into what that looks like when I was at university all those years ago. It was a very different landscape then.
Sure.
But whether I mean, rugby can get people from football quite straightforwardly. Anna Howes is a classic example. Chloe Limbrick Jones is a classic example of
Hmm.
girls that become women rugby players transferring from football. Um, the visibility thing has to continue to grow.
Yeah.
We have to possibly get free to air women's rugby on the television more. I know
Yes. Oh my
BBC
God,
and
please.
are doing it, but I think that we need to do that a lot more. We need to promote it a lot more.
Hmm.
Um, I like what some of the clubs are doing in the PWR about getting people through the gates. That's a good thing. I think obviously a lot of it boils down to funding as well. If you're going to look at top-down
Yeah.
stuff, um, but I think the more people that see rugby, the more people will want to do it. And you'll always get the people who bash rugby and women's rugby. I mean, male rugby is not in a good place
No,
at
it's not,
at the
no.
moment at various levels
Mm.
um, for various reasons. Um, Look at my club Wasps, looking to come back at some point. Worcester are just coming back as well.
And London
London Irish
London
Reds,
Irish, London Irish as
yeah,
well. Yeah.
as well. It's slow, but hopefully they'll come back strong. But
Hmm.
I think places. I think clubs all need to give it a bash at girls rugby. I like what some clubs do, joining up with other girls teams. I think
It's a
that's really
great idea.
important.
Yeah.
You know, you'll know, of course, that we connected at Stowe with Old Pat's Cheltenham Tigers and Tewkesbury, and Tewkesbury also connect with Breedon and Malvern and people like and
Hmm.
Upton and people like that. And that's that these sort of satellite hubs are really important.
Hmm.
Um, I'm doing making a couple of speeches on Tuesday at King's Home. They've got a girls' rugby day,
Love it.
and they do a bit of training, and then they'll hear my story and how if they want to go to Hartpury to play good level rugby, it's an opportunity for them. And crikey, when I started at Hartpury 13 years ago, we didn't have any women rugby players, but now on my sports business degree, four are England under 20s players,
Amazing.
and it's great. It's great.
Yeah.
And yeah, Hartpury's a shining light in women's rugby, and rightly so. But little things like there's a young lady called Madison Taylor, lives in Tewkesbury. You'll know Madison, plays for Cheltenham North. Younger
Oh, in
girl
the under
coming up
18s.
through
Oh,
the ranks.
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
She would be destined for great things.
Hmm.
Charlotte Pierce also, but I
Charlie Pierce.
started
Yes.
coaching them both,
Hmm.
you know, at Tewkesbury, and they should get to a really good level, a
Yeah.
really good standard, because now the structure is there and the opportunities are there. And as long as there's opportunities and more opportunities, I think people will be okay and they can see that there is a future in women's rugby. And as
Yeah.
long as there is a future, people will continue to play it.
I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a little bit of like how we angle like talking to women about coming into
Hmm.
rugby because half the time, like half the girls from Cheltenham North, they half of them used to play netball and got
Hmm.
told that they were too aggressive. And
Mm.
then they come to along to a rugby game, a rugby training thing, and they sort of do a little bit of a move and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry." And everyone's like, "No, that was
Mm.
great. Do that
Yeah,
again.
you're right. Yeah,
Keep doing
well
that."
done.
And they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh." I
Yeah.
can I can be a bit nuts. I can kind of let go a little bit and like
Yeah.
and it's yeah, and then they realize that actually that's the game they wanted to play all along.
Yeah. All for all of their lives, all of a sudden things, because it wasn't a big thing. I mean, when I grew up at Stowe, no one played with girls or women's rugby.
No.
When I started at Cirencester, I started up the girls' rugby team at Kings Hill School. But when I was at uni, no one played rugby. We didn't have a women's rugby team. We had all kind of, because it was in West London, a little bit flashier sports. We had Gaelic football, women. We had women's football. We had
Mm,
lacrosse, all those sports. But there was no women's rugby team. And I'm sure there is now because they play and they're part of the Ealing Trailfinders
yes.
pathway,
Mm,
which is great. And it's all good stuff. But yeah, I think we've come a lot at the Royal we've come a long way.
mm,
But there is a long way to go. But I, as a coach, am thrilled to be a small part of it. And yeah, long may it continue. It's given me some of my best friends, some of my best experiences. Um, I've been to Twickenham 5 times as a coach, all with women's rugby teams.
amazing.
It's
Yeah.
great, isn't it? You
Yeah.
know, when you go to Twickenham as a kid, you're like, "Whoa, look at this," and then all of a sudden you're down on the subs bench or you're up in the stands, might walkie-talkied up to the coaches, and they're asking you, "What do you want me to say to the kicker as she lines this up?" And yeah, it's tremendous stuff.
Amazing. I mean, I
Tremendous.
had like a felt like a tiny modicum of that when Cheltenham North we got invited to do the flag at the England France game at Kingsholm.
Yes.
And
Yes.
just being on the pitch
Yeah.
with the England team, with the French team, with all of that, the fireworks, and you really like I was
Mm.
on the pitch for like 3 minutes, but it
Mm.
didn't matter. It felt amazing, and I think that kind
Mm.
of thing definitely like they need to push that a bit more because it's so fun.
Yes. Maintaining the tangibility
Yes.
of women's rugby. Um, and when I was at Gloucester Hartpury previously, they were two double headers in the season. Um, and All I asked was that Chloe and I would be allowed on the pitch at half time
Mhm.
just to stand in certain places to see where the wind was coming from. And the amount of trouble I had to go through to get on the pitch. Yeah, they didn't have anywhere to change back in those days at Kingsholm. They had to change in the toilets when the men were playing as well. But it's a different world now,
Yeah,
and thank the Lord for it.
thankfully. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So just a few last, like these are slightly sort of more quick fiery questions, but
Mm.
what would be your overall message for young girls considering playing rugby if they're at home? Like, what would you say to them?
Go for it. Never look back and enjoy it. Play with all your heart and see what happens. If you enjoy it, brilliant. Um, but if you're thinking about it, oh, I don't know, just have a go at it.
Yeah.
You don't have to tackle. There are versions of rugby now that take out the tackling. There's T1 and all these things. There's
Hmm.
blinking walking rugby if you want, but just go and do rugby, whatever it looks like.
Yeah, love that.
Mm.
So I don't know if you know this, but I've named this podcast Pitch Bitch,
Oh, I love that.
just because why not?
Love that. Yeah, good.
Um, Um, and I was told I needed to ask what that name says to you.
Oh gosh.
But that this is because I think it's partly because my mum thinks the name is vaguely inappropriate and she's trying to get like
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. It will certainly get some attention, won't it? I guess what it would mean to me was if you look at rugby in a wider context, um, and using men's rugby as an example of this, my son Tom is a nasty piece of work on the pitch. He's fair, but he's hard, and he'll knock people over. He'll run at people. He'll make people feel horrible about themselves. But after the whistle goes, hugs, handshakes, I'll get you a beer in the club, and that's
yeah.
probably what it means, right?
Yes. I mean
Yeah,
that's my
that's
favorite thing
it.
about rugby is the fact that you
Yeah,
can absolutely hate each other
yeah,
for like 80 minutes and then go, okay, fine, lovely.
yeah. Sadly, coaching isn't quite there, I
No.
would say. At the decent levels, yeah, it's all good
Mm,
because you're there for the same reasons. Um, and it's quite a clean game. And women's rugby is different anyway because we're all there to support each other, and that's brilliant.
yeah.
But uh, men's rugby at certain levels, even Colts rugby, that's not the case.
I mean you've
That's
had
not.
some pretty bad experiences on that end, haven't
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I mean, the reason why I left Colts rugby was because I was verbally abused one Sunday afternoon. The club will remain nameless, but verbally abused by players, um, coaches, and parents from a certain club. And I don't need this. And my
No.
wife said, "You don't, do you?" So yeah, it's it's a shame. And but again, going back to women's rugby, what I love about it is its purity,
Mm,
but also it's how the game used to be in men's rugby
yeah.
and what the game should be, played in the right spirit. Um, there's none of this messing about and argy-bargy and grabbing shirts and all that malarkey. It's how it should be. It's a hard, good sport
Yeah.
played by good folks
Yeah.
and often coached by good folks too, because they're in it for the right reasons
Hmm.
too. Um, but yeah, God, another reason why men's rugby is struggling because there's just so many problems. There's a standard of refereeing um,
Yeah.
at certain levels. And I know that's a problem in the women's game too.
Yeah,
But
the inconsistency of refs,
yeah, yeah,
especially at the grassroots level, is
yeah,
challenging because it means that like we've had games where we don't understand why they've given certain calls
mhm,
and they will
yeah,
not tell us. And it's like,
oh,
well, how are we supposed to learn and
yeah.
understand and not do this again if you won't tell us why?
That's it. Yeah, tell me what I've done wrong.
Yeah,
It's not hard. It's no hardship for a referee to do that.
no.
Um, but yeah, there's problems with officiating. Um, there's problems with this whole I mean, you know how I feel about it. This whole kind of laddish culture creeping
It's very
in
boring. Yeah.
to rugby. Um, it's a different type of mentality
Hmm.
than it used to be, and I think it may become more of a problem if we allow it to be.
Yeah.
But again, going back to women's rugby, it's wholesome, and that's probably the best way I could
It's a
describe it.
great way of describing it.
As
Yeah.
a coach and a fan's point of view, it's just wholesome rugby.
Yeah.
It's rugby out how it should be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Love that.
Mm.
Um, what is the bitchiest thing you've ever done on the pitch as a player,
Um,
obviously?
Well, I was a rarity in those days. I was a goal kicking back rower.
Oh, fun.
Um, so I used to play six blindside flanker at the
Okay.
peak of my powers.
Yeah.
And yeah, you used to just be able to get away with a lot more um, on the ground. Yeah, I got a bit of a shoeing for it, mind you.
Yeah.
But I was as a stammerer in the old days, I was surprisingly chopsy uh,
Yeah.
as well. Um, but I guess I played at a decent level, and that's how you played the game, really. It was
Yeah.
a bit of a I can see that a big punch up's coming. I can see, oh, there it is, and now we're all calming down a bit for a little while, and then
Yeah.
we wait for the next
The
punch up.
next
But
thing.
yeah, that was probably I was a bit of a master of the dark arts in the old days, hanging on to players, keeping them in rucks, keeping them in mauls.
Bit of shithousery.
Yeah, yeah, you could. It was in the old days. They call keep the ball tight. Shove it up your jumper tactics. You could in the old days because they
Yeah.
were losing flirts. Shove it up your jumper. No one knew where it is. All of a sudden, I emerge at the back of a ruck with a ball in my hand, taking out my jumper, and I've scored a try.
Love it.
Great days.
There's a
Great
Joe
days.
Marler level of
That's it, isn't
fiendishness
it?
there,
Yeah,
Rich.
that's it. That's it. But again, there weren't a load of eyes on you back in the old days.
No, and the shirts, like you say, were a lot bigger. There ain't
Far
no way
more
you can put
forgiving.
a rugby player up a rugby ball up a shirt now.
No
Um,
chance.
fill in the blank. You know you're a rugby player when.
Things hurt.
Yeah,
Just doing the most mundane things causes you a bit of discomfort.
yeah.
You know, a lot of my mates now will say a little prayer when we sit down and stand up. Oh God, you right. Um, I used to injure myself running into Samoans. Now I wake up in the morning, oh, what have I done to my shoulder there?
Yeah.
And it, we've got two flights of stairs in our house, and it always takes me the first one for my ankle to click back into place,
Uh,
and I can walk fine. It's just yeah, but you wouldn't change it, would you? Really?
Not at all. I mean, even
Yeah,
after the first, always the worst, the first game of the season when you're
mm,
not used to
mm,
the contact and you feel
yeah,
afterwards that you've been hit by several trains for about a week. It takes
yeah,
ages to recover from
yeah.
that first game.
You're absolutely
Um,
right.
and then you kind of ease into it and you go, this is fine. But like, yeah, the first couple of weeks of new season is always just like, oh, can I do this? Is
Yeah,
this really a good
yeah.
idea?
Can I really do this to myself again?
Yeah.
Um, I guess one of the best experiences that I've had is when my old head of department at Cirencester Kings Hill was leaving to do. He was leaving education to go and do missionary work with his church
Mm,
out in the Far East. And as a farewell, he had an invitational rugby match,
lovely.
and it was Cirencester 15, mainly PE teachers, against Stowe thirds. It was a brilliant, brilliant game. I obviously had connections with both teams. Um, a chap that still goes to Stowe, Mr. Young, Damien's dad. I was on the bottom of a ruck, and he said, "I'm not carrying you off the pitch again." And he moved my head underneath him and protected my head in a
Oh,
ruck because he knew I had a soft head from the old days. Um, but then equally, it's apt with the first Lions match tonight.
yes.
In the 97 Lions, Ian McGeechan gives a speech. He said, "Many years from now, you'll see each other, and all it'll be is a
Mm,
look that you were together in a team." And Matt jokingly said that. But you see guys now, who are on that team. They're on the PE circuit still. One of them works at Marling School, and we instantly knew, you have a hug. How's it, mate? Have a beer. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. And that's also what's brilliant about rugby.
The community aspect is massive. Like, you
Yeah.
really do
Yeah.
make friends because it's so intimate. And I remember this is the thing that I really was like when I first joined the women's team, and I was like, we're going to be friends really quickly because otherwise it's
Mhm.
just going to be weird. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you're
Awkward.
doing like lifts and lineouts and stuff, you're
Yeah.
basically sticking your thumbs
Yeah.
up people's shorts. It's not subtle,
Hmm.
and it's just like, okay, this is what I do now.
Yeah. This is the way,
We're going to be pals.
and yeah, absolutely. But as a coach, again, you form these connections,
Yeah.
and not only that, but you get invited to weddings and
Mm,
all that kind of stuff because you build connections with people, and that is a real privilege. And it annoys me when I see people abusing that privilege in
mm,
whatever way they do, but that winds me up.
yeah. Fair. Predictions for the top four of the Women's World Cup this year.
Okay. My heart and most of my head says England Roses to win.
Hmm.
I think they've got too much firepower now, and losing to the All Blacks in the last World Cup will hurt too much.
I mean, that was
They will.
like devastating.
It was brutal, and having coached the young lady who got the red card, plays
Oh,
on the wing. I can't remember her name. The
yes. Oh
coach
my
at
God. God
coach
damn
at
it.
Worcester.
Yeah, I
That
can't
I
remember.
felt
Yeah.
for her. I really did. So England, um, probably France or the All Blacks are going to be up there in the final, and the fourth position is probably up for grabs. I would imagine. Um, Australia coming up on the rails a little bit.
Canada? Canada are
Canada are
strong.
always there. They're always there. You're absolutely right. Um, yeah, probably those three and/or Canada. Probably Canada over Australia, I think.
Yeah.
I'd certainly like Canada to be up there more than Australia, but I would love Wales to do well.
I think
I'd love
Ireland are going to
Holland
do
to
well.
do
I really
well.
want Ireland to do well because
Yeah,
they've done a step up in the last year. Like,
yeah. Had a
it's been
lovely chat.
transformational.
Yeah, it has. Had a lovely chat to Neve Jones recently.
Mm.
So here's the thing. I went to Sarah Nicholas's 30th birthday party, right? Now I've worked with Sarah at Gloucester, Worcester, and at Cheltenham Tigers.
Mm.
I went in. It was at Newlands, Cheltenham Tigers. I
Hmm.
went in. Big table of Cheltenham Tigers. All right, Rich. Yeah. How's it going, you guys? Walk further in. Big table of Gloss Harbour. Hey, guys. Walk around the corner. Big table of ex-Worcester. Hey, you guys. It was brilliant. It was like
Amazing.
a checkered past of my coaching. It was a wonderful, wonderful time. But equally at Hartpury, you've taught some of them in the lecture theatre as,
Yeah.
as well, and that was lovely.
Yes,
Really
you
lovely.
got to catch up with my favourite Sarah Byrne, didn't you? I
Yeah, I'd
absolutely love
say
her
that
so much.
she's brilliant. So they had these t-shirts printed when Hartpury got to the Bucks final,
Mm.
and Sarah Byrne was handing them out, and she's like, "I've got one for you as well." I'm like, "Oh, Sarah." Just lovely, lovely.
It's
But
welling
yeah,
up.
who else did I meet? Mo Hunt, Tat Hurd, who I used to coach.
Mm.
Um, yeah, loads of really, the great and the good
Yeah,
of
amazing.
women's rugby. It was good stuff.
Yes, and I'm sure you played it more cool than when I met Sarah Byrne on the side of the pitch of an England match, and I literally just went, "I love you. Can I have a picture, please?"
But they love it. They
Yeah,
love it, and
yeah.
that's for them. That's what will keep them playing, and and keep going because they've got supporters.
Well, yeah. Thank you so much for being on the first ever episode of the Lift Her Strength Pitch Bitch podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure and
No, it's
privilege.
been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pitch Bitch podcast. We'll be back soon with another amazing guest. See you soon.